My name's Charles Bradley Keeling Jr. I grew up on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. My mom was like in the drug side, so we were like poor white kids and they didn't like white people there. So the ghetto in Hawaii is bad. Here, if you fight, you get expelled. There, if you fight, you get a detention. You know what I mean? It's just something that's there. So it's the way of life. And so when my mom did go to prison, I stayed with my aunt and uncle, and I went to the bus stop every day, and they jumped me every day, but it was just like they picked me back up, we got on the bus, and I would go, and that was just kind of how that was when my mom was in prison. And when she got out, a month later, I wasn't sure, I was really young, she probably relapsed or something, so we tried to move her probation to the mainland. And so she went in, I think, for drugs, and she did a year. When I was in Prescott and she had to go to jail a couple times, I was homeless there, running around selling weed, doing, you know what I mean? Just kids. That's just what I knew. My mom would relapse left and right, and she would go in and out of jail 30 days at a time, 60 days at a time. I was just running the streets when she was doing that. And then I learned that my buddies would give me weed to sell. I wasn't going to school. I was just, surviving at that time. And I was 13, 14. And then she got out, she started doing well, got off probation. She moved back to Bullhead before I did. And I ended up moving back around almost 15 years old. And that's when I started getting in trouble myself. Started drinking, went in and out of juvie, on probation myself. It was just, I felt like going to jail and going to prison and something like that, I've always seen it around me that was normal. I thought that was my normal. That's just what happens from time to time, you know what I mean? And it's definitely not, it's not a normal thing to do. That's just what we think. When I was 18, I was living at this house my mom used to live at, but I took over the rent and bills with a friend, and she was living out in Mojave Valley by the river in an RV with her boyfriend. So she called me one night, and I think I was sleeping, or I was just like, I'll talk to her in the morning. And the next morning I heard a voicemail, and she says, CJ, you're my son, you're my favorite son, and I'll always love you. And I thought she was just being drunk, you know what I mean? I said, okay, I'll call you back, I'll call you back, Mom. I was drunk last night too, And so as I'm listening to that message, it's the craziest thing. Me and my brother don't talk, and he called me. At the time, we didn't talk much. He was calling me on the other line, so I deleted the message, and I clicked over, and my brother goes, CJ? He goes, yeah. He goes, Mom's dead, bro. And I said, what? I said, no. I just got me. She died this morning, bro. And it was like 2 a.m. I guess she had shot herself, and I like yelled, huh! And like I just hung up, broke down, and they had me see her body, and it was one of the most devastating things I've ever seen in my life. It was like me and my mom versus the world, and then she was gone. That was my mom. Whether she was a good mom or not, she was my mom. I loved her, she loved me, and that was all I knew. She was my only constant. And after she passed away, I just lost it. I was just running around Arizona ever since, just on my own, doing what I had to do, job, got an apartment maybe for a couple months, then go back to drinking heavy until I went to prison for the first time. I went to prison for a DUI. I had no business behind the wheel of a car. That was the first time I went to prison, and when I got out, I got on parole. I did good for about a month, and I just went right back. I went back to Bullhead. I went on the run again, and I went back to prison again to kill my number. I got into meth, I got into drugs. I started running stuff across lines, because I figured like if I was in a spot, like if I went to prison or died, I'd be in a better spot than I was then. I felt like, so I just went balls to the wall with everything, and that's just how I was. And I just used to do drugs and do crazy stuff. I went to prison for the second time a couple years later. I was in and out of jail the whole time. And a couple years later, I went to prison for two stolen cars, unlawful means of transportation, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. I beat someone up with the dull side of a machete, and it was. I felt at the time, oh, he deserved it, but there was nothing okay with what I did. And I remember sitting in the cop car like, they got me, I'm going, for a minute, and I got locked up. And when I was sitting in county that time, I always went to county, would hear about God, would go to the services, but this time, my cellie had a postcard posted above the cell door right there, and it was Jeremiah 29:11. It said, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you," and then just plans to give you a hope in the future. And I felt just like the presence of God for the first time, like all around me, and I knew how real He was. And it was just like, just this weird revelation coming open in my head, and like, you're real, like, who are you? What is this? This is amazing. I love you. And I was just like, oh wow. And ever since then, I've read the Bible every day. It was huge. It was like my whole life changed. And when I got to the yard, I was doing good for a little bit, but I didn't read my Bible as much as I was in county. I felt like this is what it is, and I was kind of leading away from Him, and I relapsed on that yard. And I was in my cell. My cellie was freaking out, and I was high on meth. And I was sitting there, I was going, like, I looked around, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is gonna be my life. This, if I don't stop, like, I'm in prison because of what I'm doing right now. And I just started freaking out, like, oh, my cellie was freaking out. He's like, whoa, calm down, dude. And it's like, it's 12 at night, you need to stop. And I'm yelling, oh, I'm sorry. Like, there's so much. And I was just like, I couldn't, I was just at a point where I'm so sorry, Lord. Like, I can't believe I did that. And I felt the presence, like I had it was like true repentance maybe, or something, whatever it was. But I fell to my knees and I just said, sorry, Lord, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I'm sorry. And so that point on, I made a plan in my head. I was like, tomorrow I know I'm going to want it, but I'm going to say no. And I was like, Lord, I'm going to say no. I need your help a little bit. And so tomorrow it came, and they were like, hey bro, you want something? I was like, no bro, I'm good. I'm not trying to do that anymore. The next day it came, and I said the same thing. I know I'm gonna want it, Lord, and I want to say no. And so I did it again, and it came with a super good deal. They were gonna give me a grip for nothing. And then the next day it happened again, and it was gonna be for free. And it was a grip, and they're like, here, I got you, bro. And I was like, no, I don't want it, no. It's like I made a decision. When you make that decision, God will help you and He'll lead you through. And once I said no then, because the devil will come at you with it every time, I was like, no. And then after that, it was like, I was skated. I haven't done drugs since that day. And it was all, I give it all to God, but you got to make a decision to choose Him. And I did. And I was highly blessed. And so the last year and a half that I was on Cimarron, I got my diploma. I spent time with God. I was going to church. God's love and God's grace gets me through any trouble I've had. God's grace gives me the forgiveness I need to move forward. And if you don't take advantage of His grace and you say, God, I'll do better, I'll get it again, because we're going to fall every time. I fall every day, no matter what. But His grace is what makes it possible to go from grace to grace. And when you can do that, you can move forward and not dwell on the things that He's done, because He doesn't see that anymore. And when you come to know that, because I could see that who I was and do all that, because I have more years of bad stuff than the couple years of good stuff. But He only sees since I've met Him. He doesn't judge me for that, and He knows that I messed up. But when you use that grace to grace and you don't take advantage of it, you can learn to learn. That's the only way to go from grace to grace. But once you start taking advantage of it, I feel like, oh yeah, He'll forgive me. He's not gonna. He has to take His hands off you real quick for you to. He'll send you on your way. You know what I mean? And then you'll come back to Him. But He loves you, and that's why. His love, His unconditional love, gets me through anything. Gets me through lonely times. Gets me through temptations. Gets me through. This is real. And if you really put your faith into the fact that Jesus has really died on the cross, and if you really put the fact that He loves me and He's here with me, and know that the Bible's real, can get you through every day. That His word is something you can stand on, but it takes faith to do that. And when you put that faith in there, He'll prove Himself faithful. His word does not come back void. Charles Keeling, before Jesus, was an alcoholic, an addict, didn't care, selfish. He was nearsighted, couldn't see an inch in front of his face. No matter how good his heart was, no matter how good your intentions are, it's what comes out, and it wasn't good, because what happens is the abundance of the heart. But Charles Keeling, after Jesus, is being successful, responsible, stable, strong, caring, has a heart for people. This is where I'm at, and he can turn anyone into something amazing. It's amazing, just so cool.